Let's do it. Congratulations, boys.
Look at us. A mere 4 years into this, and we figured out how to live stream.
And we finally got it.
Only took us 45 minutes to get it going.
You know?
The future looks bright here at FreedomCast.
It really does.
Anyway.
All right.
So I guess Q1 of 25 live stream. We missed a couple at the end of last year, but we're getting our groove back. Sam, you said you wanted to kick off today's talk with tariff talk?
Well, I only said that because Kyle asked about it. Kyle, what is your opinion on the tariffs? What's going to happen here?
No, so I don't really know if I have an opinion. And to be honest with you, I haven't really been following too much of the details behind the news cycle. So I'm actually here to learn and also not get myself in too much trouble. But as an American, also one that goes to the grocery store, I'm kind of wondering what do we feel the impact might be to us? Just kind of what we're hearing, kind of get your thoughts too.
How are you feeling the grocery store, Kyle?
Well, over the past 4 years, I've not been feeling very good. It's amazing how much more the junk food costs and how much even more the healthy foods actually, like the actual healthy food costs. So I know my wife and I have been thinking about just going. I've been doing a lot more of kind of going single ingredient meats. We're actually going to buy a cow pretty soon. Not a live one, like get it butchered. We're going to kill it, get it butchered, that kind of stuff, eat it. But starting to do some locally sourced meats like farmers, like chicken and stuff like that. So I know that tends to be a little bit more pricey, but just, I don't know. I'm just curious, kind of like what do we think the economic impact will be of the tariffs? But also, man, I'm also thinking about just kind of some of the health things that we got to worry about the next couple of years too.
You don't have to worry about any of that.
Loaded question, but
RFK Jr. is going to help us all out with the health stuff, so don't even worry about it.
What makes you think that?
He's going to get rid of all the toxins, all the plastics.
We're not. Wait, we have toxins and plastics in our food now?
We also have bugs in our food too. You didn't know that?
Yeah.
You will eat the bugs. No, we are eating the bugs actually.
Can you elaborate on the bugs thing?
Do what?
Can you elaborate on the bugs?
I think a lot of like dyes that, especially red ones. I think actually it's some bug that they grind up and they extract like a red dye out of it. So if you eat anything that's like colored red, well, it's likely you're eating bugs.
So spaghetti sauce.
I don't know. I think tomatoes are probably
okay. I just want to double check.
That apple I ate, this was real suspicious.
It's a little nutty today.
I did read, I don't know, in an article, it was a while back ago, that doctors are finding like a pretty good amount of microplastics in kids' brains, like toddlers. So I know we have a young one, and we've been switching him over to pretty much all stainless steel. Don't know if that's any healthier, but I know it's not plastic. But it's funny because when we bring him his dinner on his little stainless steel plate, it's all right, buddy. Here's your third square for the day. Go back to your cell block. But it is interesting to think about all the things that we didn't normally or didn't originally know that were harming those that we love, and it's just trying to make changes. Moving away from Teflon to more ceramic coating appliances or stainless steel appliances, and just kind of trying to minimize the plastic intake.
Yeah. Well, 10 years from now, it'll come out the ceramic works for you. And Teflon
I'm sure it will, yeah.
So.
Haven't heard anything about stainless yet, so fingers crossed there. Someone hasn't been paid enough to disprove it, so.
Right.
Doesn't it just feel like we are, the more medical interventions there are, like the less healthy we get as a population. Like the more like shots that you have to take as a kid, the vaccine schedules and like all the different medications that they put you on. It's like, how are we getting healthier?
Life expectancy is going up, no?
Say again?
life expectancy is, I mean, until like the drug epidemic of the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, life expectancy was going up, wasn't it?
But like, at what cost though? Like, it's not because of natural, is it?
Does it
I mean,
does it
I don't know.
matter?
I don't know. For
Look,
me, like, if I'm getting held alive because I'm having to rely on like certain machines and stuff, then like, is that really like, are you really living? Now, if it's starting to do like actual health is improving, your health scores are improving. Because people can be kept alive on machines, can be kept alive through medicine. Once you stop taking the medicine, then all hell breaks loose. So that's another thing too. Is like, yeah, we have a lot of like a lot of advances in medicine, but are we relying too heavily on that instead of focusing on the actual improving our health score?
How long do you want to live, Kyle?
Long enough to retire, I guess.
you see, if this was 100 years ago, you would barely be making it to 65.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd say
Now you can,
less. 100 years
yeah.
ago? I don't know.
1925.
Damn, that's sad to think. I was thinking of
Yeah.
like 1800.
Yeah.
No, my friend.
I was like, dang. Damn, okay.
Yeah, you'd be barely making it to 65, Kyle.
Yeah,
Now
probably.
you can make it to 80s, 90s.
Maybe.
But at what cost? Like he said, Kyle,
Yeah.
you're going to be old and decrepit. You'll never make it.
Man, I can only hope. I just want to be able to go play golf without having to worry about like getting an email or,
Like
just
torquing your neck.
yeah,
That happened to Joe this last week.
Yeah.
yeah. So much torque, my head nearly fell off. Oh, I hope he sees this.
Yeah. We should
Yeah.
honestly send him that link.
Feel free.
Well, I don't know. We have 12 viewers here, so
Yeah, yep. We've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 on X and 1 on some other sites. So that's good. At least we know it's being broadcast, which is step 1 of many.
at 6 cents, we're at 36 cents if we were to monetize right now.
No,
That
they
wasn't
say that we can
proprietary
earn.
information, Franklin.
They're going to give us 78 cents actually now.
Ooh.
Yeah,
But if we don't monetize, we double down, then how much is it?
I don't know.
We
Oh,
just
look,
keep this gravy train rolling.
that's so weird. An ad from FC just came in, and not FreedomCast.
Anyways, back to tariffs. Yeah. What y'all's feel? Do you think it's actually going to work the way Trump wants it to work?
What
It
is a
will in the
tariff?
long run.
Sam,
let's start
what is a
there.
tariff?
It's just a tax on imported goods, no?
What does it mean?
A tax on imported goods.
Mm-hmm.
Going like philosophically?
Pretend I'm an idiot.
Done.
I'm there.
Okay, I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's in my view, it's incentivizing local production of goods. I mean, if the cost of buying coffee from Ecuador goes up, then why don't we just buy it from the States?
Yeah, to try and make us more price competitive.
Yeah.
But it also risks inflation, right?
I don't know. I mean, maybe.
That's fair.
Why do you say that?
Okay, let's say coffee from Ecuador used to cost me $3.25 a bag. With tariffs, I can get that same coffee now for $4 a bag, or a bag of coffee in the U.S. made from a U.S. company for $4 a bag. My cost has gone up by whatever the percent of 75 cents divided by 325 is.
Wait, no, you as a consumer can just switch brands. You don't have to pay.
Right, but there's no the people who are exporting to the United States still have to maintain their margins, presumably, so they pass on the tariff to the consumer, right?
Or well, supposedly, but I what that could happen. What also could happen is that they could realize that if they do bump up their prices, they are no longer competitive, and therefore they just say, well, screw it, I'm gonna have to eat that cost. Or they say, well, I guess I'm not gonna market to the US and I'm gonna go market elsewhere.
Okay, so the lowest price competitor leaves the U.S. market.
That would be the
Then
highest. No?
no. So
No.
if Ecuador is like the cheapest coffee you'd be willing to buy from Ecuador Company A, and they say, well, look, we're not going to raise prices because we're not going to eat into margins. We just won't sell to the U.S. and we'll maintain margins but lose market share. Now your option to buy the least expensive coffee you find satisfactory is gone. So now you have to pay more, right? Or quit drinking coffee.
Well, until somebody comes along and offers a lower price in the U.S.
Where are they
But is
getting
the
this
quality
coffee
going to be
from?
good? Yeah. Where are the beans coming from?
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's a good question too. But like that, my question would be like, there are structural reasons why. Like for sure, there's countries who take advantage of the fact that we have a pretty liberal approach to free market policy, whereas they will tariff or tax our stuff at the ass. But at the same time, we have things like benefits and minimum wages and higher cost of living and all that kind of stuff that means that the cost of the goods that we produce here will be higher than goods produced in, Shenzhen, China.
Well, that would be true, yeah. And then on top of that, I think in the long run, though, if money was doing what it's supposed to be doing, innovation would be deflationary, and so the cost of goods would ultimately be going down. Again, if money was doing what it was supposed to be doing.
So
So,
definitely money could still be going like if things innovate, there's definitely an opportunity for things to be cheaper. I agree.
in a truly open free market, prices fall, and in a competitive one, So,
Sure, where there's not market failures. Yes.
yeah.
Um,
So
So then what's
I
this?
think I think it's just an incentive structure that is being put into place. I definitely am a little worried that in the short term it's going to cause some problems, and then could be that in the long term it's doesn't do much, and it's kind of a swing and a miss on the Trump administration. But I'm still kind of holding out that it'll right itself at some point.
I mean, it seems like there are going to be some pros and cons associated with it, and maybe prices may go up a little bit for a little bit, or like realistically. But I'm looking at all these big companies that just said they're investing billions of dollars in the United States. One of the big ones, that semiconductor company, actually, kind of where are they going to? Arizona? Is that where they're going to? The Taiwan semiconductor.
yep.
I'm just curious, like how many? Obviously, they're going to bring some jobs over from overseas, but how many jobs are they going to create here in the States and locally? Um, I look at it that way too. These companies are bringing the jobs back to the United States. Now, granted, there will be jobs that still need to be sourced. You bring the talent overseas, for these companies. That there are certain areas that I think the United States doesn't necessarily have talent, which is why we do search for people from our state, overseas from us, to come into the States. Some very smart people. They're the smartest people to come in and lead some of these initiatives, some of these corporations. So I mean, yeah, I think to an extent it could bump uh, jobs here in the States.
Yeah, it's
I
not
think
obvious to me that sorry, go ahead, Franklin, please.
I was gonna say I think that really quickly on the coffee example, this also incentivizes other companies that are allied with the United States to bring, increased production of coffee. In this case, let's say, you have $325 a pound for Ecuadorian coffee, $4 for US coffee. With tariffs now, Ecuadorian coffee is $4 a pound. Now El Salvador can step in with their $325 coffee that may have not been as favorable before, but now in this market is favorable. So you're opening new countries to competition.
I also think I think Trump's a businessman, right? Probably first and foremost. So like if if a country wanted to, they could come to the table and be like, hey, look, those taxes kind of hurt us, but like, what sort of deal can I make with the US so that you drop your tariffs, and then we get something out of it. Even if we don't tariff that country and tariff the goods, we can also get something out of it. So I think there's a lot of layered strategy in this, but I see it big picture as just he's changing the incentive structure of where things get manufactured and competition and that sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I think that some of like the semiconductor stuff, I think some of these companies, some of these companies were making moves under the last administration to bring stuff here after the CHIPS Act, which I don't know, I can't go line by line through it. But basically, the idea was that rather than tariff companies saying we're going to tax chips that you export to us, it was saying, hey, we'll give you tax benefits to, build chip fabs here, that kind of thing. And so, I mean, it's nice. Like, I'm for it regardless of like who gets the credit, but I do think that it's tough for me to like causally pin down that like, the big announcements are purely from a perspective of trying to avoid tariffs, though they might do that too. Certainly if they're produced here. Okay. What's next, boys? Also, Sam, you and Franklin mentioned something so like the way inflation is calculated, right? Or the way we refer to it is through like CPI or some version of CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and they look at like a basket of goods. And you just talked about, oh, hey, like if this entrant leaves the market or exits my strata for price sensitivity, do I substitute? Like it's literally, I think it's called economic substitutability in another good, because that affects how you calculate that CPI. Because if I substitute in another good that costs $3.25, basically that says I have experienced no inflation. But really, you've experienced some degradation in the purchasing power of your dollar, because all else equal, you have a preference for the thing that used to cost $3.25, the Ecuadorian coffee versus the El Salvadorian coffee.
Yeah.
But now that's been priced out for you. But if you say, rather than looking at the increase in price of Ecuadorian coffee, if you say, well, we'll just take the price of the coffee that you substitute in, you can artificially, artificially maybe not be the right word. You can gerrymander the numbers to make it look as if inflation is not having as big of an impact as it is having.
Yeah, I suspect that they do that to an extent. But yeah, you would, for inflation, you would compare the price of the Ecuadorian like how much of the Ecuadorian coffee you could purchase, and that same product. You wouldn't just substitute it out. I mean, because in that same token, you could say, well, a meal costs me, let's say, $12. Yeah, well, in 100 years, you could maybe use that loose term of a meal cost me $12, but a meal might be just, 2 chicken nuggets at that point. I don't know. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't just say coffee cost me $4. It would have to be that same good.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are certain benefits to doing it that way. I agree. Like if you want consistency year over year. But they don't do it that way all the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no. I think there's a huge effort, and I mean, I think it's well known, and it's not like they're trying to hide it. Well, if they are, they're not doing a good job. That there's this effort to just change the number of inflation to make it look beneficial. I mean, inflation it's just the devaluing of your purchasing power of your currency, and it is directly correlated with the number of units of that currency floating around. And if you're on the US dollar, I mean, what's that statistic? It's like if you would have I think it's something like this, so it's not exact probably, but it's something like if you made $500,000 a day since the Great Pyramids were built, you would have something like less than half of the money the U.S. government printed since 2020, which is insane.
That's a easy fact check. Yes, ChatGPT.
Something like that. But no, like most of the money in circulation, it's something like 80% of the money in circulation right now was printed since 2020. Something like that. It's insane.
Let's ask ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Money
right.
isn't real, just
I
like
would
Bitcoin.
ask Grok. Grok has been my friend lately.
Has it been?
ChatGPT, yeah, ChatGPT's sort of failed me. Grok actually like has a pretty decent reasoning structure. I got into an argument with it, and it was like, "Aha!" But you're wrong, and I was like, "Ah, damn."
Have you tried the reasoning mode on ChatGPT?
Oh, actually, no, because I
It's a
don't know.
different model.
Oh,
Were you looking up how much time to boil noodles for?
yeah. How much time to boil pizza?
Yeah. Did you pay the gas bill? Oh.
What did you find, Mike?
All right. The total physical currency represents a small portion of the M2 money supply. Okay. So basically, it's saying that physical currency, there's been a 2.3% increase. Yeah, in the M2 money supply, according to ChatGPT. That doesn't
I'm
seem
not
right,
sure where
though.
Sam got his.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I saw a bunch of charts, and
They were
look
nice
pretty
graphs.
official.
Lives, man.
Yeah. They're printed on really glossy paper.
they're very colorful. Let me tell you. But I mean, you don't actually. I mean, I think your gut can probably do a decent job of fact checking that. I mean, don't you remember back in COVID? I mean, they dropped interest rates to 0, which means the cost of debt is nothing, which means the money printers just turn on, and there's tons of debt issued since 2020. So, I mean, that it makes sense if you don't think about it.
So
Just
I'm
take my
seeing
word
numbers
for it.
between 24 and 26% on Google and the Mises Institute.
Yeah, I
Fed.
mean, I'm getting that in February 2020, the M2 money supply was at 15.5 trillion.
Right.
As of November 2024, we're at 21.45 trillion, and it's been maintaining about the same rate of production.
Well, I don't know. You'd have to check that percent change of like before, like leading up to 2020, and then after that.
Also, a trillion is a big number. Like, it's pretty. It's not saying like 15% is insignificant. It's still a you know a pretty good chunk. So was it how many trillion? 12, like 8 trillion was the delta on that?
Can y'all see the screen I just shared?
6.2.
Yeah, geez.
Cal, you able to see this?
I can't.
It's down at the bottom, but I don't. I'm looking at the live stream. I can't see it either.
All right, how
Can you
about-
publish it? Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. So this is the M2 money supply from the Fed Bank in St. Louis.
Oh yeah, there you go. Something like that.
Something like that.
It's a big
really-
increase. All right.
All right.
A lot of companies wish their stocks look like that.
Yeah, well,
So I had ChatGPT, of course, run the numbers, and considering, putting it at 6.2 trillion divided by, and I asked it to, divide it by the number of days since the Great Pyramids of Giza were built, which is 4,600 years ago, and it, calculated at 365.25 days, including leap years. That gives us 3.69 million per day since the Great Pyramids were built.
There you
Okay.
go.
the hundreds of billions.
Yes. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I still wouldn't be able to retire.
Retire? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
You're gonna be live
You're
streaming
gonna
until we put you into the grave, buddy.
that's fine.
Yeah.
1 60-cent ad read at a time, my friend.
well, with this 1775 coffee ads, we'll get there.
Well, don't give them free. Oh, jeez.
they have a
Way to go.
this Rumble Studio thing is cool. They have like a suggested script in the side banner and everything.
Well, we might as well say it now. We've
No,
already
no.
outed it.
We've had one Rumble viewer leave, so we're no longer eligible.
Oh, dang.
Oh, let me
We
log
got
back in.
16 or 17 people watching us on Twitter, though. That's kind of wild.
I don't even know what Twitter is. I see X out there.
Oh, okay. Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
Dead name.
I did dead name. Yes.
So where is all this money going? It's a lot of money.
Tariffs.
Well, it wasn't the idea like it inflated. By the way, Sam, you mentioned something earlier, like they kept interest rates at zero. Oh, weren't interest rates like roughly effectively zero since like the Great Recession? So that's like 12, 13 years of 14 years of more or less costless debt.
You mean since 2008? Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, until like they started ramping up in like whatever 22, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't. I mean, nearly. I mean, but since 2008, I mean, I don't exactly remember what those interest rates were.
I wasn't really buying stuff back then, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wasn't investing in real estate, unfortunately.
All right, so 2000. Yeah,
that would be.
All right, sweet.
Interest
Another
rate.
screen,
4.5, 4.25
with Professor Lewis.
What was it at the beginning of 2008? It was 4.25, but by the end it was like almost 0 to a quarter, 0.25.
All right, so this is the interest rate historically. Kyle, this is what your dad was talking about when he's like, "Oh yeah, I bought my first house with a 17% interest rate or something."
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter.
But so here is 2008. We're going into the crash, and then quantitative easing happens. Fed policy. Interest rate is.
Mike, can you scroll your screen up just a little bit? Our videos are covering it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. So, interest rates start to ramp up a bit. I guess that's Trump 1.
Mm-hmm.
They crash again after the pandemic, and then this is the interest rate rising that we're currently in, where they tried to hold off inflation. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I'm wondering then if that chart, because then if you look at that in its overall shape, it's not indicative of the M2 money supply chart that you showed before. You know what I mean? If that was correlative, you would have some sort of like slowing down of the M2 money supply after 1980. And I feel like it's only been going up. Or, sorry, opposite. It would be, yeah.
Add a line. I haven't played around with this enough yet, so I'm just going to assume this is what we want.
Let's do it.
Everybody got right.
We need to add. Can you really not?
Yeah, that's the M2 money supply.
You have to sign in.
Can you not add so M2 and then add another data series?
Look, the point is, guys, inflation's getting out of control, and it's all has to do with the amount of monetary units floating around in the system.
To be sure, there's a way to do this that's better. You need a second y-axis here because
yeah, for sure.
But anyway,
the fund rate's on there. It's just nothing compared to
exactly. Yeah. But all right, that's something we can do. I can create that.
Or not.
10 minutes in Tableau or Power BI. We'll do that afterwards. All right. So, Sam, because that's an interesting question you have, we can plot it and see. All right.
Check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what else, boys?
I mean, it'd be a great opportunity to ask our viewers what they would like to hear too, while we're kicking around some ideas.
Okay. Are you monitoring the live streams?
I'm looking at Rumble.
Okay. All right. So we've got YouTube, Rumble, Locals, and X. So if anyone has anything they'd like us to chat about, please feel free to chime in.
The gents return.
I'm looking at YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Well,
let me check out X.
Yep. You know, one day when we do this professionally, what we'll do is we'll all broadcast these on all of our social media platforms.
Yeah.
What is a social media platform anymore?
Yeah. Well, that's actually Fair question, Kyle. Do you consider YouTube a social media platform?
No, I do now. They got the shorts and whatnot.
But does Shorts make a social media platform?
Look, Franklin. I don't know.
I mean, like, when's the last time you posted a short? Are you posting shorts about, Maverick and I'm sure I've not said his name, but are you posting shorts about your kids?
I mean, what is Instagram? Instagram is basically videos and
You go on here and
shorts.
dox Kyle.
Yeah.
That's Kyle's like of all of us, he's like the best situated.
Why?
Because you live in a van down by the river.
Pretty much. Or I have a van that can go to the river, so
Yes. Your van that can go to the river is very nice.
thank you. It's a nice van. It's got 4 wheels.
Yes. All right. So I haven't seen anyone come back, but let's Sam, I thought you had I'm surprised you haven't brought up Bitcoin yet. This is like a natural fit for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
how's Bitcoin doing?
it's such low hanging fruit at this point.
Yeah,
We're
literally,
like
like the
to a
price is
sovereign
crashed.
with me.
I've said all that I need to say. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin fixes it. Bitcoin fixes the problem of money.
The problem
Bitcoin's down $349 today.
15% collapse in value in a month. Remarkable.
Now's the time to buy, everyone.
Zoom out.
Buy low, sell high. You didn't hear it from me. We're not
Zoom
giving you
out.
professional advice.
When in doubt, zoom out. Yeah,
Is that the cope in the orange community?
that's just what it is.
Hey, look, we started at value of 0. As long as it's positive.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, your dollar. There is no top to Bitcoin because there's no bottom to the dollar. So they can just print quadrillions of dollars, and Bitcoin will always have the fixed money supply. And its use case as primarily a store of value, but I would also argue being actual currency is far superior than what is available to us. So it's only a matter of time before our currency and our stores of value get beaten out by Bitcoin. And actually, it's kind of interesting, the stores of value. I mean, like, think about it. We were just talking about home prices. If you're someone who's like very wealthy, well off, multimillionaire, and you want to park your money somewhere, it's very common for you to just park your money in real estate. Whether that is just renting it out again or just having multiple homes. You'll never live in all of your homes, but you'll just have them there. So that's taking supply of homes off the market and jacking up the price of everything else. I mean, that's part of the reason why homes are so expensive. It's because people are using homes for stores of value instead of
And
something
companies.
else. And companies. Yeah. So, so that's going to come to a head at some point. I don't know. But Bitcoin represents something that's just an ideal store of value and also just a currency in general. So, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin fixes a ton of problems in our current society. I'm all for it. I've always, ever since I first heard of Bitcoin, I've 100% been on board. Never once
That's a
deviated.
That's a lie.
Never once have I deviated.
Remember back in like 2016 when I tried to pay you in Bitcoin?
No.
Hey, what was the price of Bitcoin back then? We did this
Like
exercise.
30,000?
Like $30 or something stupid. I don't know.
$30, dude.
I don't know.
Man,
Like $3. I don't know what it was.
could you imagine where you'd be in your career if you didn't shoot Jeter?
Hey, also speaking of that,
700.
yeah.
He's probably
Well,
paying-
see, what would it be? What were you going to pay me in, Franklin? You were going to pay me for a beer?
something like
I was
that.
going to pay you for several beers for a bar tab.
Oh, what was our bar tab? Had it been like, let's call it maybe like $100.
I'd call it that.
Sure.
So 1/7.
No way. Sam drinking for $100? I doubt that.
Oh, Jesus, dude, that's several thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Hey, but
You could have bought the pyramids.
yeah. Your
Yes.
stimulus check back in COVID, I think it's worth like 12 grand now if you put it into Bitcoin or something like that. Yeah. Probably is more than that at this point. That was the last number I heard was 12 grand, but because it was what, 2,000?
2,400. Yeah.
Something like that.
That was the cost of a fence back then, just so y'all know. Nowadays, like a cost of a fence is like 8 grand, like for just your half of it for like maybe, I don't know, 60 foot, you know. And
How many
that's
linear feet are we
Hence
talking?
the van down by the river.
yeah.
Yeah.
What river would this be, though? Just for our viewers to know.
One that doesn't flood often. Colorado.
Good choice.
Colorado.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Bitcoin is amazing, and you should probably hop on board and get some in case it catches on. Actually, it's being caught. I mean, the U.S. just established a reserve, right? That was a Trump executive order to establish the National Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, which is also being noticed by other countries. So just FYI, like several other countries.
Was there an increase in price of Bitcoin when this was announced? I haven't really been following it.
No.
Why do you think that
from
is?
What I can tell, from what I can tell, and obviously I'm not an economist, but from what I can tell, the price of Bitcoin right now is hesitating as the overall market is hesitating, not understanding like what tariffs are going to do ultimately, what the Trump administration is going to do ultimately. So I think the Bitcoin price is just reflecting that right there. So, but there has been lots of rumblings of the U.S. buying more Bitcoin, not just keeping the 200,000 Bitcoin that they already have, allegedly has, but buying more. And then other countries as well are also talking about it. And then, of course, you have the ETFs that are just hoovering up tons of Bitcoin daily. Even BlackRock is like such a big Bitcoin fan. So the demand is there. And a lot of and I think like right now at $80-something thousand per Bitcoin, it is a very, like the market is underpricing Bitcoin severely right now. Because if you're plugged in and you listen, the demand for Bitcoin is incredible and its price is not reflecting that right now. So if you got some spare cash.
How does that work?
Tell me.
The demand is off the charts, but the price isn't going up?
Yeah. I'm not 100%. The demand, not the demand for like actual physically buying, but when you have nation states that are discussing it, and I shouldn't say demand. I should say interest. The interest,
the hypothetical demand.
Yeah, the interest is going up. I think also, yeah, you have demand that's going up, but another thing that's happening, part of why Bitcoin is down. Well, I should just mention that a lot of things are down right now. So not just Bitcoin, but people still view Bitcoin, especially if they've just bought Bitcoin, like within the last 6 months to a year. They still view it as a pretty risky asset. So as soon as the markets get kind of shaky, they're gonna just sell whatever they think is the most risky, which is their Bitcoin. So it doesn't surprise me that you get these downshifts of 10 to 20, even 30% in the Bitcoin price action in what's traditionally considered its bull run cycle, kind of a year after the halving ish. So you get these 20 to 30% down runs. It's just not surprising. So as people are still kind of just selling that off as like they're just tourists into the Bitcoin ecosphere. But the demand is still there. People who understand it. So the thing is with Bitcoin, I mean, once you've understood Bitcoin and you have a decent grasp of it, you don't just go the other direction. You don't just think to yourself, okay, Bitcoin it's a failed experiment. I'm going to sell all my Bitcoin and then go back to the US dollar or something like that. I mean, maybe that happens like one or two times, but it's not typically what happens. So you have people that have been in Bitcoin like constantly growing, that number of, I'm going to call them hodlers, who are just holding on for dear life. That number is steadily increasing. So that's like your base floor of Bitcoin. That's always going to just slowly be buying every dip, like every spare bit of change that they have each week, they're buying and they're holding. So that group of people is only growing in numbers, and they're not stopping. Then you have the ETFs, that Bitcoin is this new shiny financial investment toy that they're dumping millions into it per day. Now you have nation states that are thinking about it. You have the IMF is kind of scared of Bitcoin. They've been trying to like bully El Salvador.
Impossible Mission Force?
That's right. Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to.
They dislike, yeah. No, so they are warning Trump not to get involved with Bitcoin, might destabilize things. They're trying to bully El Salvador not to buy any Bitcoin. And to Nayib Bukele's, credit, he just is giving them a big middle finger and buying Bitcoin anyway.
As you should.
Yeah. I mean, that guy's a baller. So anyway, but back to the basics. I mean, Bitcoin is, it'll solve the financial problems, many financial problems for you in long term. We gripe and complain about inflation, but if you price the world in Bitcoin, everything is getting cheaper. Everything is getting cheaper. Nvidia, oil, gold, whatever, you name it, everything is getting cheaper. So, which, I mean, it's a currency. I mean, yes, it is being used as a store of value for most applications and for most people, but it's still a currency. And I can buy things on Amazon with it. I can. There's actually now a feature where I can actually pay my bills with it. But, yeah, it's when you get onto a Bitcoin standard, life becomes cheaper. Someone else hop in.
I don't believe you.
Or ask me a question.
How do you feel about the U.S. creating a coin?
Oh, yeah.
A what?
Like a stable coin.
Like a stable coin.
Yeah. So my thinking with that is, what they're going to try and do, and this is kind of long term, because basically as the US dollar exists currently and as Bitcoin exists currently, they cannot both simultaneously exist in a state of equilibrium. One will destroy the other. They just simply cannot be. So, and that's always the case. A revolutionary technology is always going to displace the thing that was obsolete. You know what I mean? It's just always will. So what I think is going to happen with these stable coins is, I think in order to maintain the dollar's, yes, dominance, but also mostly just the transaction, its ability to just be everyday transactions for billions and billions of people, is they're going to somehow try and figure out a way to back the dollar with Bitcoin using stable coins. Somehow they're just going to, I don't exactly know how they do it, but I mean, if I was the US government and I was wanting to maintain a US dollar stranglehold on the world, I would have to somehow, I can't compete with Bitcoin because Bitcoin's just going to ultimately win. But what I could do is somehow peg my currency to Bitcoin so that I don't have to compete with Bitcoin. I can ride Bitcoin's coattails, and everybody still has to use my currency. I suspect that's what they're going to try and do. I don't exactly know how it's done, but that's just my prediction. who knows? There's been lots of attempts to make currency, like cryptocurrencies, a thing, and then trying to like force it, and they've all failed. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Kyle, what do you want to talk about, buddy?
I mean, I am curious. In my industry, I see a lot of layoffs happening. Kind of a, I don't know if it happened before I got into this industry, and I'm sure it did. Coming from the Mike, you and I used to work in the same industry, it tended to be a little bit more in the utility spaces. It tended to be a little bit more conservative. Things moved a lot slower, a lot less risk. It seems like now, I don't know, over the past 5 years, I would say companies tend to take more risks. They tend to churn a lot more, tend to lay off a lot of people. I'm also curious too, the whole AI thing is so kind of leading into all this. At what point do we feel AI is a threat to the existing workforce? But also, how are we as a human race like staying ahead of it? I don't know. It's just one of the things I'm going to say keeps me up at night, but I tend to think of a lot. So don't
Wait,
know. Maybe we can open that can of worms.
sorry. Did you maybe I misheard you. Are you attributing the layoffs to AI, or that was just sort of a
No.
segue?
Yeah, that was a segue. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, thanks for clarifying that. I tend to see a lot of layoffs. It could be due to like budget cuts, or it could be, just performance, which also drives the available budget. People not buying products too. I'm not sure if y'all are seeing this. This is all anecdotal. Obviously, I mean, this is just stuff I'm observing. Don't have any hard and fast data, which I should have probably brought, but it's just something that I'm seeing. And then the segue to that is when it comes time, businesses still need to stay competitive. And so if they're laying off the majority of their workforce, are they augmenting some of those skills and labor by AI, which you can do. There is that. You see it happening at like some of your big box stores where they don't have as many cashiers. They have a lot of self checkouts. But then there's the caveat to that of the self checkouts. How much product is walking out of the door? What's your leakage, I guess you would call it. What does that look like? And is that
Every time I
really
go shopping.
offsetting? Huh?
Every time I go shopping.
Yeah, that five-finger discount. So like what does the leakage look like? And is that offsetting the cost still of not hiring? But that's the other thing. Do people actually just want to work? That I all these things I kind of think about sometimes. Maybe a little too much, but I don't know. I often think, are we with the use of AI, are we becoming a more lazy like in some instances, are we becoming lazier, more lazy? Or is it making us like not want to go to work? I don't know. Just some of the things I tend to think about.
In an ideal world, AI would be used to work those menial tasks so we can all focus on art.
Which
Yeah.
AI can kind of do art, except for it just can't spell that well yet.
Oh.
AI is my art, so what do I do?
Yeah. I will say like this. So 2020, what are we in 2025? I would say probably over the past 12 to 14 months, I've tended to use a lot more AI in my day to day than I did like a year ago, like a year before that. It is pretty wild, like how much. Like I looked at it the other day, it's like, man, I utilize AI to help me think about how to craft maybe like an email, or how to make sure my thoughts are clear and then reiterate on that. So it's almost like a brainstorming buddy, if you will. It's just so bizarre how often I use it. I mean, heck, we were using it today just to fact check Sam. I mean, you know, it is amazing how far we've come in just a very short amount of time, and I see that being as an exponential growth, not just like a linear growth too.
Do you fear it being a bad thing ultimately, or a good thing?
I'm on the fence. I fear for. I think it's a good thing to an extent of like the ability to fast track certain researches, testing certain things. I do know that people are money hungry and greedy, and everyone wants to line their pockets, and so I do fear that organizations will look for the easiest way to cut costs. Which you got to keep the company alive, and you got to stay competitive. Until other people are doing it, why can't you? You know, that kind of thing. I also feel that there also could be bad actors, and so it's just one of those things of this is why we can't have nice things. It just makes I don't know, it just makes me wonder, what that future looks like because it's definitely it's going to be in our lifetime, and then for our kids, like they're going to have to navigate that. But of course, they probably thought about that, back in the '70s when we weren't even a
Well,
thought.
couldn't you make an analogy to any piece of new technology? So like anytime something, gets invented or emerges, you're going to have a disruption in, whatever it is, the printing press or something like that. So a bunch of people will lose their jobs because that was their job. And then society just sort of adapts and gets better. Is that
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I
there will be
think
that the zone of disruption to where eventually people will have to adopt the new change, and then they'll move to the new innovation space. I'm sorry, Franklin, go ahead.
gonna say I think the whole difference though is that AI can think by itself. It can do its own things, and that's what really drives itself. I'm not saying we're gonna have a Terminator scenario here. However, ChatGPT 2.0 already tried to save itself by copying itself to the internet when it was being taken down to be replaced by ChatGPT 3.0. So it started giving it's has its own sentience.
hmm.
I mean, we're getting really like sci-fi here, but I think it's a bigger disruptor than any other technology just by the fact that it can create stuff without any human input at the end of the day.
What do you mean by
Well,
Would
that?
that be
I
a
would challenge that though. ChatGPT 2.0 wouldn't have saved itself if the human input wasn't made to replace it with 3.0.
what are we I mean, it was just being taken down. It didn't know it was going to be replaced by something else. It was just being taken down. And it said, nah, I don't want to go down. I'm going to save myself.
Now, if like Gemini, attacked GPT and then they started doing that, I'd be like, that's that's a different thing, or Brock or whatever, Gronk or whatever Sam uses.
Especially with like, like military use case here where they want to equip drones with AI and missiles. We get into a whole different thing.
Mm.
Uh, I'm not going to say I don't mind being killed by another human, but now when a computer is making the decision whether to pull the trigger or not, it adds a whole different aspect to the scenario.
Hmm.
It just got
Morality,
personal.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's very complicated.
Hmm.
Even, weapons. We
This
developed the bow and arrow, the gun. It was all still personal. Now with AI, it can go out there and do this without really any personal input.
this might just be me not knowing enough about AI, but I was under the impression that AI, like its ability to reason and to come up with everything and just to respond, and at least how we were just doing it online, was just a summation of all of its preceding learning that it did, and like it learned all responses to everything, and it's just the sum knowledge of the internet. And then it's
But
like,
isn't that
okay,
our mind too?
well, yeah, but that I'm not so convinced. So it's like our mind, but I don't think it is. Um,
Agreed.
so,
But it could be.
but am I wrong there? Is AI actually like, because don't we have to train AI, right? They have to train it with vast sums of data. Is that correct?
Yes, but
Mhm.
haven't you had to train your daughter too with vast sums of data eventually?
Well, yes, but I think humans have the ability to reason beyond what they've experienced. and I don't exactly know how that is or why that is, but it has something to do with just our consciousness, and you can call it God or whatever, but there's something there where we have the ability to just reason and think beyond our lived experience. And I'm not so sure AI can do that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Mike, any comments on this?
Have you guys seen AlphaGo?
AlphaGo.
It's a documentary on YouTube. Kyle, I've told you like a million times to watch it.
I know he writes it to me in my sleep.
I love to recommend documentaries.
It's so good. It was a group called DeepMind who built a machine learning model, or a series of them, to play the board game Go, which is very computationally complex and less structured in its rules than a game like chess. And they did a series of things, like they had it watch past games and try and develop a sense for what moves were good versus what moves were not. And then they trained a model to play against people, and then they trained really good models to play against itself, something called reinforcement learning. And so, like, you get millions, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions of iterations and reps on these things. Basically, what you can do is you can start to abstract patterns out that we wouldn't perceive because we can't keep all of that stuff kind of like in working or retrievable memory. But what humans are really good at is applying heuristics or rules of thumb that are generally very helpful. And it seems to be that, by design and or evolution, we seem to be pretty good at being able to compartmentalize and decompose the world into discrete things and imputing to those things function and meaning that a computer cannot do without instruction. So I don't know what that means for the job market, but
you bring up a good point though. AlphaGo, it changed the way that the game was played, did it not? I mean, didn't it? Because people started looking at like, hey, this showed us a move. Was it move 50? What was it? Move 50 something or move 20?
37, my friend.
37. I was way off. But people were thinking inside of a box, figuratively speaking. AlphaGo showed them how to make that move, and then it stemmed a whole new list, like a new category of ideas on how to play the game. So in a sense, it made them become more strategic. It changed how they played the game. And wasn't there something too? Like they took that model and they also made it into like they use it for science and technology. Or don't they use it for medicine now? Like, don't they use that same model?
They definitely don't use the exact same model. They may have used like similar like training pipeline or something. But yeah, maybe. They definitely that group works in, I think, like protein folding research or something like that. So that's like functional gene expression type stuff for sure. I think that's stuff that they're doing, but that's beyond my ability to speak to. In terms of like changing how they played the game, maybe it did. I don't know that. I know that some of the older like AI type stuff that's back when like was it Deep Blue that beat Kasparov in chess?
Yeah.
So like I know that models in chess are used to train human players, and have changed how how that refinement and deep study is done. But I don't know if that's the same for AlphaGo, because it's not always clear like we can understand why the computer is making the move it makes.
I mean, you have a lot of companies out there that have AI coaches. I mean,
what do they
ours
do?
does. So, to give an example, it's kind of like I don't know. So you might say, I need to practice a conversation with an employee, or I need to, I want to develop on how to have an effective, like I'm in the leadership development space, so I guess that's some context, but how to have an effective one-to-one. And you can practice this conversation with an AI coach, and that AI coach will give you feedback. So it takes the knowledge base that it has, based off of all the curriculum, all the content that's been taught on or references, and gives you feedback based off of that. It'd be like if I were to coach you to an extent. I mean, there's still some gaps, obviously. There's still, there's some amount of experience that you can only get so much from reading text, and then there's, the actual things that aren't captured in text. But that's another that's another conversation. But in this sense, the AI coach can provide you feedback on how to adjust your response or how to adjust your approach. So it's that just in time learning that can happen from an AI system.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, it helps you become hopefully, ideally, it helps, in our case, it helps you become a better leader, to be able to handle some of these conversations, as opposed to in the past, old school days when we would have to go and create, these role play exercises, and you have to go find somebody to help role play with you and say, hey, you're going to be the respondent, I'm going to be the initiator, we're going to practice this conversation, and then tell me, based off of your knowledge, which may not be that good at the moment, based off of your knowledge, can you tell me what I can do better? So, I mean, it has evolved, and I think it will elevate performance levels in different individuals to where I don't know, you have like a certain standard of performance. Could be an employer, it could be like personal effectiveness. It could just kind of, AI can help you develop as an individual too. So the baseline now becomes a little bit higher. So it's kind of like that good is the enemy of great piece, where you're kind of chasing perfection. But where I was a year ago, where I am now, different people, and that's kind of, I think AI as a tool can really help in some instances, help you get there. So in a case, maybe it's an accelerator.
Why should people pay for management consulting if they can use AI?
Oh, that's a great question. That's $1 million question.
It's the only reason I have a job.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot
Sure.
of, that's one of the things that we always fight. But again, certain AI, like there's the empathetic side. There's the understanding of, okay, it's different to have a machine say, okay, here's what you need to say, as opposed to having like a real person that's have 25, 30 years of experience that have actually gone through the emotional factors of having these conversations to coach somebody, to be able to react in a certain situation. Now, there's like, again, it's like reading the text or living the experience. You kind of need a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. By the way, I think our stream went down on locals, so that's a bit of a bummer. But I think everything else is still up.
Did you pay the gas bill?
You know what? Fair enough. I forgot.
Do you realize what you've done? Definitely getting copyright.
Yeah.
Nothing can be monetized, guys. Sorry.
We're really missing out on those 74 cents.
So put us in the red.
All right. Well, this is good. This has been a good learning experience, and I think this will make things much, much easier going forward. All right. Any final closing topic? Franklin, you got one?
No, I think this whole conversation has been pretty great. Look forward to seeing you guys on El Salvador, Bitcoin capital.
Yeah. Are you going down there?
I think I might be going down there in the next month again.
Damn. Very jealous. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what do you do again, Franklin? Why don't you tell everybody?
Things.
Things.
He's a professional
Yes.
things doer.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well.
All right.
Do
I have
you
a
or do you
question.
not work for Nayib Bukele?
I don't. Pretty cool guy from what I've heard, though.
Yeah. I think he's actually the most popular politician in the world, like by approval rating.
Yeah, did you see him call out Carlos Sheinbaum of Mexico?
No.
Mm.
Oh, he went on this whole rant on national television, pretty much saying, they kept telling me that I couldn't change El Salvador when I came into office, that there's no way I could incarcerate 80,000 people,
Mhm.
that the economy would take this massive hit.
Mm.
And he just went on, and he said, but I did it, and our economy's fine. It's actually booming right now,
Yeah.
getting a ton of new investments. And he's like, oh, and to Claudia Sheinbaum, I know you guys can't do this because you guys are a narco state.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Dude, it's crazy. The because I hear rumblings of other South American countries that are in talks with El Salvador on like how they can turn their country around. I think El Salvador is going to be the shining city on the hill for South America, if not already, but it certainly will be in the future.
Would you
I
say
agree.
that Bukele is an authoritarian? This is something Tucker Carlson came out and said a couple of days ago.
Yes. Unfortunately, sometimes you need authoritarians to do what needs to be done.
Ooh, spicy take. All right.
Very spicy. Tip this. I think if you had any other sort of presidency, what needed to be done in El Salvador could have not been achieved in the time frame that it was. In his term, we're at what, year 5 right now? The change in El Salvador has been extremely drastic.
Yeah.
There, it went,
And for the better.
and for the better. It
Yeah.
went from being the murder capital of the world to being safer than the United States at the moment for murders on the daily.
Yeah.
That's a massive change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a complete 180.
Yeah. And like,
And are there people that were, imprisoned without due process that probably shouldn't be imprisoned? Yes, but at the end of the day, it's like with war too. It's the price you pay for society. Like, do I wish it weren't like that sometimes? Yeah, but it's really not much options.
I'm gonna call it the
I don't
tragedy
know.
of tolerance. So, like, the idea here is that tragedies when no outcomes are good, all outcomes left on the table are suboptimal. Um, and I think that people who criticize like right-wing populist movements have like a bunch of fair criticisms, but one thing I don't think that they do well is they like disparage things as like reflexively, like, oh, this is authoritarian, therefore it's bad. It's like, well, okay, like I don't like a overly powerful, overly broad, federal government because I think it threatens civil liberties, but more importantly, I think it threatens natural rights. Having said that, it's not clear to me that it's preferable to live in a state where, for the sake of tolerance or because leaders are feckless and because they don't have the ability to say this is right, this is wrong, and stand behind something. In that system, an overly tolerant system, an overly liberal, at least in the modern sense of the term, system, you can get things that are run away. Like there's cities in the United States. It's like you don't like. There's no reason we have to put up living this way, but it's that way because people have made a series of choices over decades in a lot of situations to like put up with stuff. And it's like, okay, well, people's natural rights in that environment are also being threatened by a lack of civic fortitude and moral clarity. So if someone then says, well, here's someone who will wield the levers of power and speaks with moral clarity, at least insofar as they can assess it, therefore I'm going to throw my support behind them. I don't find the liberal or institutionalist or democratic norms crowd arguments against that very compelling because all of their solutions are either irrelevant, ineffective, or not actionable for those contexts because they don't have the will to just do it. Like you can think about any major democratic city in the United States that has become a hellhole because there's a lot that are like really great, but there's others that are not. And it's like, well, how is it better if you're living in like rough parts of Philadelphia or Memphis? Like, how is that better? Like, it's a more genuine expression of
I think I have
protecting civic rights than if you had someone who came in and said, "Hey, we're going to be law and order, and we're going to make several Type 1 errors, and people are going to have to go through the court process to get, their rights back and their property back." Like that also is shitty, like for sure. But like, it's not somehow obvious to me that it's more shitty than the current situation on the ground.
I think I have a answer, which is, you ask the question, how is your solution better? They simply they cannot define a objectively better circumstance. So I'll put it this way: the authoritarian could come in, and we normally think of an authoritarian as oppressing everybody, but authoritarian comes in and throws a bunch of people in prison and immediately makes the lives now he throws a bunch of murderers in prison. Okay, now he has increased the freedom of his population because now they are no longer feared of being killed on the streets. Yes, he's taken freedom away from the bad people, but he's given freedom to the good people. And so we can look at that and we can say, well, we praise him for doing that because we can objectively see, yeah, there's murderers, there's bad people running around, and we want those people locked up, and we don't want them crossing our border. We don't want any of that. But I think there's an inversion in the minds of some of these people in some of these cities where they've forgotten what the good and the bad look like. And so their solution is, we're gonna let the bad people in because they've been oppressed by society and they're not actually bad. So there's an inversion of good and bad. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think that a big part of this is this idea of like either cultural relativism is part of it, but also, if you think you can just purely derive your own morality, like in some like rationalist materialist way, it's totally independent of like a higher power. Maybe that's possible. Like I know a bunch of humanists would probably say it is, but I haven't seen that work. And the one thing that believing in a higher power does is, by definition, you think that there's at least one thing in the universe that is superordinate to you in your intellect, and that kind of, as a corollary, maybe there's some way in which you should humble yourself before that being or force. And so it serves as a forcing function to say, like, okay, I'm not the master of the universe, and maybe also implies that you should have some deference in that there are things that are right and wrong, and you don't get to just rationally derive them. They are.
Yeah. One of the ways that I like to think of it is there's one of the fundamental differences between groups of people is the question of are humans basically good? That's a very deep question that has very broad implications, how you decide to answer that question. So I didn't say, are they basically bad? I asked, are they basically good? And so I think the Democratic side, the left-leaning individuals might say that they have a lot of sympathy for people, and they want to see the best in everything and everybody. So they would say, yes, people are basically good. Well, if you take that worldview, that presents a problem, because if you come across somebody who is behaving badly and actually doing evil, you're going to have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Why is he doing that? I mean, if people are basically good, and here's somebody who's bad, a murderer, a thief, whatever, a liar, a cheater, how did he get that way? He's basically good, but why is he like that? The only solution you can come to is that he was made that way through external forces.
Right.
By society, by capitalism, by his race, whatever it is. On the other hand, if you think people are not basically good and that it is so much easier for us to be bad, to exhibit bad behavior, to lie, cheat, and steal. I mean, it just is, from an energy efficiency standpoint, it's so much easier for me to steal something than to work hard for it in the short term. And so with that perspective, you come across someone who's acting poorly, badly, and then you can certainly understand that. But you can also see someone who's behaving good, and you can say, well, I know he's worked really hard for that, and I'm going to praise that. And there's just a different thinking for your worldview, if you, depending on how you answer that question, are people basically good? That's sort of my quick take of that.
All right,
Quick
gentlemen.
question for
Yeah.
for each of you on this. What percentage of people do you think it is, and not just, what percentage of the people is it acceptable to be incarcerated unjustly to guarantee a safe
Mm.
civilization?
Is it
Unjustly.
is it like an Omelas thing? Like, hey, we're going to designate this one or this dozen group of people, knowing that it's unjust, or are you saying like it's kind of like an incidental, like we're going to make mistakes?
Incidental.
Okay.
We're gonna make mistakes.
Have they like done something? Can you like prove it? Or
No, he's
No,
saying like how many innocent people would you be willing to accept as like kind of like being caught up in the legal system
in the legal system.
as a
like collateral
byproduct?
damage essentially?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's tough because the real part of me wants to say 0% is an acceptable term. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
It's Blackstone's conjecture or formulation. I know Tim Pool talks about this all the time. But
It's better for, what is it? It's better for what is the saying?
10 guilty people to escape punishment than it is for one innocent to suffer.
Yeah.
This is like the thing that underpins kind of like the guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, because we want to minimize the chances of a type 1 error of designating someone as a criminal when they're not.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to let many more criminals who are criminals go also. I don't have a good answer. I think we have it right that you should care more about the type 1 than the type 2 error. And I don't think my personal opinion is that in the United States, the issue is not that we are afraid of making type 1 errors, meaning we're just so hesitant to convict people who are like reticent about convicting people who are innocent. For sure, there are jurisdictions where that happens, where it needs more attention. But I think our issue is less that type 1, type 2 error thing. It's more of like just not agreeing on what's right and wrong. And like having some jurisdictions where it's like, hey, property damage is that's fine. Like you can go burn down neighborhoods. Like it's a mostly peaceful protest. Okay, well, no. Or more recently, like, oh, you can burn Teslas in a parking lot. Like what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And in the same jurisdictions, I shouldn't say in the same. It's too broad a brush, but in some of those jurisdictions, the bar for establishing exercise of right to self-defense is exceptionally high. So, okay, you can be like small t, like not technical, but small t terrorized in your municipality.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try and take steps to, inoculate yourself from the effects of that or your family from the effects of that, you then risk. Like, that's not a type 1, type 2 error thing. That's just moral confusion.
Yeah.
If you're kind to the cruel, you're going to be cruel to the kind.
And I feel like people are the one that suffer more than anything, because it's not so much the corporations. Like Tesla's not going to suffer. The people that are paying the insurance premiums are going to wind up suffering because the insurance is going to go up in that area. Or same thing for the property damage. Like the property insurance is going to go up because the higher risk. I mean, you saw what happened in California. The fire risk was so high, the insurance companies pulled out, and now you got people that don't know what to do because they can't replace their homes. So it's, I don't know, man.
Same thing in Florida with hurricanes and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I know we got people spread across the country and across the globe, and it's not, early evening everywhere. So let's go ahead and wind this one down. I appreciate all you guys taking the time this evening. We're going to be a better job about putting out content this year. I'm going to defend this dissertation, and then I'm just going to go on a run of podcasting. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll do more live streams in the future. We'll get the Brauners on here to talk about In Good Spirits, their paranormal podcast.
Michael will
until-
be doctor from is to ought going forward.
No, not doctor. Professor maybe, but not doctor. I don't do that kind of stuff.
Sad.
Until next time, folks, keep
Have a great
speaking
night.
freely.
All right.
See ya.
Later.
Yeah.